Our son Jonathan left for school 8 months ago, leaving Marie and me alone at the age of 45. We were proud of our son and his scholarship to Oxford University. Alone, we needed to rebuild our relationship and start a new life without children. I assumed that our sex life would immediately improve, and we would return to our former sexual activity, which used to be frequent and fun. But for the first 2 months, Marie was a little depressed about having her baby boy all to herself. Also, I think she realized that she was about to turn 46 and had new wrinkles and a few extra pounds on her face. In my opinion, they accentuated her beauty, but I think she felt that life was passing her by and that the years of fun and excitement were behind her. After doing some research, I learned that this is quite normal. I made sure to give her positive feedback, lots of compliments, and time to adjust to our new family life. A few months went by. Friday night, she came home from work happy and excited, just like 20 years ago. Full of smiles, she was like a new woman, and we spent the weekend in bed catching up on all the years we had spent doing chores we no longer had. Before I could even undress, Marie was already on her knees, ripping off my pants and underwear as fast as she could. It ended with both of us experiencing another amazing bliss and collapsing into each other's arms. We spent most of the weekend in bed, and our sex life reached heights we had never reached before. The next morning, I woke up with Marie pressed against me, smiled, and said, "Good morning, sexy. That was an amazing night. What's gotten into you?" Whatever it was, I definitely want it to continue. "I love you, baby," was all she said before we made love again before going downstairs for breakfast. For the first time in years, I felt like our sex life was back on track and we were starting the next phase of our lives. What I didn't know, and learned later, was that it wasn't me, but a man from her work that brought her sex drive to this level. Over the past 6 weeks, he had shown an interest in Marie. His compliments and flirting had brought back some of her youth and confidence. This clearly helped in bed, but created unwanted problems in the months that followed. 3 months later, our lives were going well, and financially we were secure in jobs we enjoyed. Jonathan was doing well in school, and for the past 3 months our sex life had remained great, and we seemed closer than ever. I still didn't know what had ignited her heightened sexual passion, but I was enjoying every minute of it. Daily blowjobs, great sex every night. It was paradise, and I was happy she felt the same way. I was fulfilling all her needs. I felt like a real stud being able to perform at this new and improved level of sex. Friday nights were our traditional date nights. Every Friday night after work, we would go to the movies and dinner early, rush home and make love until we fell asleep in each other's arms. We did this rigorously to maintain a life outside the home. We both enjoyed our date nights and tried to recapture some of our youth and relive our adolescence. For our age group, we were having sex more often than our friends, and I was trying to maintain the excitement. On this particular Friday night, she asked if we could go out for a drink after dinner. She squeezed my legs slightly flirtatiously, bestowing me with a look like, "I'll try to make it worth it," with a sly smile. She wanted to go to a new club she'd heard about from the girls at work called The Sanctuary, which was only 10 minutes away. It was a fun club with live jazz music. We had a couple drinks at the bar, and Marie was even more amorous than usual. I enjoyed her energy and couldn't wait to get her into bed. She definitely had me in a state of arousal. She smiled and kissed me gently on the lips, continuing to stroke me on the verge of finishing, but stopped and continued to tease me, nibbling my earlobe and whispering naughty things in my ear. I wanted to take her right there at the bar, but at that moment the band stopped playing, causing us to stop our public sexual escapades. The band was taking a break while I finished my third martini, and that's when a man I didn't recognize walked up to us and shouted in a loud baritone voice, "Marie, is that you? You look terrific tonight." I must have had a shocked look on my face when I saw my wife's expression change from smiling to concerned and quickly introduced us to each other. "Hi, Brandon, it's so good to see you. Brandon, this is my husband, Charlie," she said as he hugged her. I felt a wave of jealousy wash over me as my intuition told me that something was wrong. Even in my intoxicated state, I could see how coincidences add up. A joyous mood in the house, a new bar, a wife showing more love than ever, and a chance encounter with a man at the exact bar she wanted us to go to. I had no proof or reason to suspect anything untoward, but now I was wary. Brandon looked like he was just over 40, handsome, with a voice like Barry White's, and I could only imagine how many women melted listening to that sexy voice. He was friendly and a good conversationalist. After another drink, I started to relax and think that maybe his coming over was just a coincidence. He sat with us for about 20 minutes. The jazz band started playing again. Everything seemed fine until he asked me if it would be okay if he asked my wife to dance. She stood up and said, "Of course he wouldn't mind, wouldn't you, darling?" and led him to the dance floor, leaving me there before I could answer. I was angry, realizing it was a setup, and after 3 slow dances, I almost left her there and went home, but decided to stay and see how it ended. As I watched, little things annoyed me. For example, the way Brandon pressed my wife too close. It bothered me how she rested her head on his shoulder, wrapping her arms around his neck. It bothered me the way he whispered in her ear. Alarm bells rang in my head, and I realized that my intuition had not failed me and that trouble was brewing. They came back and acted as if nothing had happened, and Brandon struck up a new conversation as if slow dancing with my wife was a regular occurrence. Brandon was very complimentary about my wife and how much she helped him at work. When he asked me about my hobbies and what I liked to do, Marie stood up for me and answered him too quickly as if it was planned. "Oh, Charlie loves to watch soccer and is Manchester's biggest fan. He never misses a game on TV. "Charlie, is that true? You know there's a playoff game tomorrow? Are you planning on watching it?" "Yeah, me and my friend Jake never miss a game and we'll be at the pub enjoying their win over Liverpool." "Well, Charlie, old boy, today's your lucky day. You see, I have 2 tickets to the game that one of my suppliers just gave me, and since I'm not a soccer fan, I was going to give them away." He pulled out an envelope and showed me 2 tickets with Tier 1 center field written on them. They were awesome seats and impossible to get. But they were there. I immediately realized what this was all about. It was like the serpent in the Garden of Eden holding out an apple to Eve and offering her a bite. I shyly replied, "Wow, those are great tickets. You should go and enjoy the game." "Not my type, old boy. Look, I'm not going to use them, so I'd like you to have them and enjoy the game. I mean, since you're Marie's husband, I'd be honored if you had them." That's just the way it was. My anger was red hot. I knew exactly what was going on, but I took the tickets, and if he called me old man one more time, I'd tear his throat out. I said calmly, "Thank you, Brandon. That's generous of you. I'm sure Marie and I will enjoy the game." I knew exactly what to expect when I heard my wonderful wife's voice. "Oh, no, honey. I hate going to these games. You should go with Jake. I mean, you both would enjoy it there more than I would." "Don't worry about me. I've got a lot to do. So it's settled. You'll go with Jake tomorrow." At that point, I wasn't sure how far their relationship had gone. I wasn't sure if she was already with him or if she was about to betray our marriage, but it was obvious that she wanted him and I was being sidelined. Apparently, she misunderstood my determination and cunning when I decided to observe this progress. I had no evidence other than my intuition, what I'd seen on the dance floor and the obvious bar scene tonight. So I'd let it play out and see where it went, making plans along the way. There was no way I was going to share my wife, no matter how many playoff tickets or money I get. If she wanted to play with someone else, she was free to do so, but I would be out of the game and her fate would be sealed. I saw Brandon for what he was. Brandon was a sophisticated man, handsome, with a seductive voice. Yes, he seemed fun, smart, successful, seductive. In short, the kind of guy that would attract any woman over 40, but the problem was that the woman he was seducing was married and she wasn't on the menu. Brandon was one of those predators who enjoyed the game of seducing married women and turning the husband into a cuckold. It gave him power, boosted his ego, and gave him free sex with no strings attached. I knew him for what he was, pure evil. Marie was in a great mood from the drinks and the time spent with Brandon and didn't notice that I hadn't said a word since we left the bar. She was pretty damn horny when we got home, but I was still pissed and faking a headache, blaming it on too much drinking. I pretended to fall asleep, but I felt her lay down next to me, using her fingers and getting rid of all the excitement she had felt that evening. Jake and I did go to the playoff game, although I wasn't a total dork. Before leaving the house, I strategically placed the 2 voice-activated voice recorders I had picked up that morning and turned on the Find Me app on her phone while she was in the shower. Since they both knew I would be gone, I was sure they would have time to either hang out or discuss what had happened the previous night at the bar. To my surprise, she didn't go anywhere while I was at the game, and there were no interesting recordings on the devices I had set up. I was still suspicious and wary of what would happen next. When I got home from the game, Marie was beautifully dressed and had prepared a great dinner for me. After a firm kiss and a loving hug, she led me into the kitchen. "How was the game, honey? Did we win?" "Yes, Manchester won 3-1. "Baby, you must have been so excited to watch the game in such good stands. That was so kind of Brandon." "Yes, very kind, and those were great bleachers." Marie seemed pleased and smiled all evening. To my dismay, from that day on, I kept hearing about Brandon at work or their lunches together, about how successful he was, about his cottage on the lake, about his traveling, about what a nice guy he was. I was losing my patience. And then one evening, she came home excited and happy and hugged me and kissed me harder than usual. "Well, it was a nice greeting. What's going on?" "You're not going to believe this, but you know the opera La Traviata?" "Yeah, you've been talking about it for years. Why did you ask?" "Well, there's a performance at the Royal Opera House this Friday." "Marie, you know I hate opera. Do you really want to go?" "Yes, I do, but you don't have to go. This is really good news. See, I had lunch with Brandon today, and he told me he just got great tickets to this opera. Another vendor got them for him, just like the ones he got you for the playoff soccer game. When he heard that I had always wanted to see this opera, he offered them to me, but got upset when I told him how much you hated opera and wouldn't go. Then he had a great idea and offered to take me to my dream opera and then out to a nice dinner. Isn't that nice of him, dear?" "Very generous." "What a nice guy," I said sarcastically and continued. "But of course you turned him down?" "Well, no. Why would I do that? I mean, I know you don't want to go, and it's no big deal. Surely you don't mind if I go with Brandon." "It's important. What's important is that you don't go out with another man. Whether I'm home or away, my wife doesn't do that." "Frankly, I'm shocked that you would even consider agreeing to go on a date," I said, knowing full well that this was all planned. "Oh my God, I didn't think of it as a date. I'm sorry, you've got it all wrong. You know Brandon, and he's our friend. I mean, he got you those awesome playoff tickets, and you had a good time. He paid for all of our drinks, and he's been a good friend to me at work. I'm sure you understand." Smiling to myself, I decided to give enough rope to hang myself and see where that would lead. "Well, yes, he did all that, and he seems like a nice guy. However, I feel uncomfortable with my wife dating another man. I would prefer you not to go off and do something stupid, but you are a grown woman and can make your own decisions. But you know what I want." She must have noticed my anger and frustration. "Okay, honey, you don't have to worry, I understand. I didn't want to upset you, and I'll leave it at that right now. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings." "My feelings are fine. I'm worried about my wife." She came over and kissed me on the forehead. "Don't fill your silly head. I love you, and this was never a date. Now stop being jealous and let's drop the subject." We dropped it, but I didn't forget, and when she wanted sex that night, I told her I had a headache as I was very angry and hurt by our conversation. I still wasn't sure if she was having sexual relations with him, but she was having an affair with him whether she realized it or not, and I knew that if I didn't put a stop to it, there could be big trouble ahead. If she was already having sex with him, then it was over between us. This Brandon thing was becoming a much bigger problem, and I told her that hearing about him all the time was making me a little jealous, and I wanted her to stop seeing him at lunch. She protested and pushed me away. "Charlie, I gave up the opera tickets like you asked, but you're being silly, and I'm not going to stop being his friend. And if that means having lunch every now and then you're going to have to show a little more understanding." Of course I was pissed, but I needed to figure out exactly what I could do about it without exacerbating the rift in my marriage. Soon after that, in addition to lunches, they started having drinks after work. When I accused her of having an affair, she swore there was nothing sexual between them, but she was just enjoying his company. "So you're not attracted to Brandon?" "Don't lie to me, Marie." "Well, every girl in the office likes him, baby. People are talking about me, and I haven't done anything yet." "But you want it, don't you?" "What girl wouldn't? I mean, he's so handsome, and that voice is mesmerizing, but you have nothing to worry about." "I have nothing to worry about? How would you feel if I was going to have lunch and drinks after hours with a girl I wanted to have sex with?" "Something tells me you wouldn't be so understanding." That conversation didn't go too well, and for a few days our house got a little cold. She got angry at the thought of me being with another woman and made it clear that was not an option. She then informed me that she would rip my head off if I ever cheated. I thought she was delusional and not thinking straight, and I had a bad feeling that our future as husband and wife was in serious jeopardy. Then it happened. One evening she came home 3 hours late without calling and leaving me anxious. She walked in as if nothing had happened and came over to kiss me as if all was right in the world. To her shock, I pushed her back and with a murderous look, I uttered a nasty phrase that made her realize what I thought of our situation. "It's nice that you finally came home. Did you fuck your friend tonight?" My wife had never heard me talk to her like that and immediately apologized and explained that her phone was dead. She lost track of time and would never do that again. "You were with Brandon?" Marie lowered her eyes and answered nothing. I was angry and made it abundantly clear that our marriage was on thin ice if this continued. "Marie, let me be clear. If I find out that you have already slept with him, or if you have been intimate with him in any way, it is over between us. I will not live with a cheater, and I will not allow myself to be lied to." This shocked her, and she swore she had remained faithful, apologized, and said she would stop. For the first time, I believed that Marie had finally realized the seriousness of my demands. She had indeed stopped talking about him and his greatness, but she continued to go out to lunch and drinks with him without telling me. The only thing that stopped was hearing about their time together and what a wonderful person he was. 2 weeks later at dinner, I finally asked her if she had stopped having lunch and drinks with Brandon. She touched my arm and smiled at me like I was a child trying to soothe my feelings. In a sympathetic tone, she admitted that she was still seeing him, but decided not to tell me so as not to hurt my feelings. To my bewilderment, she didn't realize how angry or hurt I was upon hearing her confession. What she said next made my head explode as she told me something that no normal man would put up with. "Baby, you know that I love you and that Brandon is just a friend. The thing is, he wants to take me to a company dinner because his date canceled tonight. He needs a date. And since we're such good friends, I told him I'd go with him and that you wouldn't mind." Shaking my head incredulously, I said, "No, I don't agree with that. So no, you can't go with him. Damn it, Marie, you're still my wife, at least for the moment. Charlie, stop being a jealous old fool. He's our friend, and he needs my help. I'm leaving, and you're just gonna have to trust me. I promise you'll be fine. Old fool, this guy influenced her, and now she's calling me the old fool? Marie, if you leave, I promise you I won't be okay, and nothing good will come between us. I can't physically stop you, but the answer is no. You can't leave." Obviously, there was no sex that night or for the next week. I barely spoke to her because of my anger and frustration over the whole Brandon situation. She seemed to understand and stopped pestering me about Brandon and the date. The day after her confession, I got a call at work from Brandon. Apparently, Mary had given him my number, hoping he could convince me to change my mind. She was definitely going to get an earful when I got home later that night. "Charlie, old buddy, how's it going?" "Brandon, what a surprise. What can I do for you?" I asked, expecting to see what the predator had in mind. "Well, I called to apologize. I'm sure Marie told you that I asked her to help me and be my date to the corporate event. I realized that was a mistake, and I'm sorry if it caused any problems at home. Yes, it was quite shocking, and I told her how I felt." "Yes," she told me, of course. "You see, my mistake was that I should have called you first and asked your permission instead of putting Marie in that position. It should have been done man to man." I sat stunned. This guy's poise was staggering. Listening to his confident, hypnotizing voice was unreal, and it pissed me off even more. "So, old boy, let me make it up to you and provide you with whatever you want. I can arrange season tickets to Manchester if that's okay with you." "Brandon, are you asking me to trade my wife for soccer tickets? Are you trying to turn my wife into a whore? A friendship in exchange for merchandise? You have such a low opinion of her? Look, I think you misunderstood me. I don't share my wife with anyone, and if you call me old man again, I swear I'll rip your tongue out the next time I see you. I'm perfectly capable of buying my own tickets now. Let's just put this whole thing behind us, okay? I have to insist that you leave Marie alone and find another woman to keep you company," I said with a clear anger in my voice. It was as if he didn't hear anything I said and just kept talking. "Charlie, my friend, I'm sorry you feel that way about this because I really like Marie, and I wanted to ask your permission to let her accompany me to my event, and I wanted your blessing. Please don't be angry with Marie. Even if she wants to go, it's my fault. So would you change your mind about her being my date for this one night? Brandon, listen carefully. No, just stop asking. She's not going with you, and that's final. In fact, I want you to stop having lunch with her and meeting her after work for drinks. It's starting to affect our marriage, and I'm sure you can understand how I feel. Charlie, I'm sorry you feel that way, but we're just friends, and I'm not going to stop being her friend because of your insecurities. I'm sorry you won't let me do you this favor. After everything I've done for you, I gave you those awesome soccer tickets and offered you season tickets, but you just don't seem to appreciate my generosity. Screw you. I already thanked you for the tickets, and like I said, I can buy my own soccer tickets. Now please back off and stop interfering in my marriage, I said, tossing the receiver of my work phone. That evening, I came home to a very depressed Marie. She had obviously heard about our conversation and didn't know how to act. Finally, she couldn't stand the silence any longer. I heard about your conversation with Brandon today. Did you have to be so rude? You hurt his feelings. The look I gave her after she asked if I had to be so rude could have frozen our pond in the middle of summer. Screw you and screw his feelings. I wonder why you're worried about his feelings and not your husband. And why did you give him my work phone number? Do you need to be with him that badly? Maybe I should just leave and then you can be with your new boyfriend. She lowered her eyes and said, I was hoping you two could be best friends. You know, so we could all go out together. I'm sorry things turned out this way. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Are you out of your mind, woman? I don't want anything to do with him, and I told him to stop taking you to lunch and drinks. In case you forgot, you're a married woman. Start acting like one, or this will end badly. I assure you. This infuriated her, and she spoke up. Stop acting like a jealous teenager. We've been married for 20 years, and nothing will happen. I hope you're right. I'd hate to think that I've spent my last 20 years with the wrong woman. That comment seemed to shake her, and I hoped she would come to her senses. Nothing more was said that night, and again, no sex. In fact, I started sleeping in our son's room because I was so angry at her actions and comments that I needed to be alone. Marie was upset that I had moved to another room and tried to make amends over the next few weeks. She said she stopped seeing Brandon at lunch and tried to be a more loving wife. I eventually started sleeping in our bed again, but I still wasn't ready to have sex with a woman who had obvious feelings for another man. She didn't like it, and she tried to get me in the mood a few times. I knew deep down that she was still dating Brandon, and my intuition was telling me to be vigilant if I wanted to save my marriage. Unfortunately, I found out the date of Brandon's event by looking at the text messages on my wife's cell phone. We didn't have passwords on our phones, and I had never spied on her before, so secrecy wasn't necessary. Reading her plans saddened me because I knew things would change between us. What I learned also made my planning much easier. To my surprise, the last few weeks of her being a loving wife was a way to win me back and help me forget about the problem with Brandon. What I learned was that my conniving wife was going to break the news to me that she was actually going to an event with Brandon the following Thursday night. Then a thought occurred to me, and I wanted to see if she would go with him, or stay faithful knowing that I had forbidden her to be with him. So the next morning at breakfast, I announced that I had an appointment in London on the 22nd and would not return home until late the next evening. Knowing that Brandon's event was scheduled for the 22nd, I gave her the option of either tricking me and going to the event or confessing everything and telling me her plans. Either way, I wasn't going to stick around. If she announced her plans and went to the party, I would move out and file for separation. If she did that without telling me, the marriage would be over. Unfortunately, she remained silent and did not tell me her plans. She continued to deceive me by pretending to be a loving and perfect wife. I enjoyed delicious dinners every night, a clean house, and tender kisses when I got home from work, but no talk of Brandon or the upcoming event. Thursday morning, I kissed her goodbye for what I knew would be the last time and headed to my office. Having no intention of leaving for London, I would spend the night at the same hotel where the event was being held. During this time, I met with a solicitor and arranged for the preparation of the divorce papers and a possible filing date. I offered twice the fee for a process server to be with me at the hotel where the event was being held and deliver the documents upon my approval. If she did what I thought she was going to do, it was over between us. Brandon's invitation to dinner, I sat in the lobby, modestly dressed in a COVID medical mask, tinted glasses with a baseball cap, and read the newspaper with a perfect view of the front doors. Sure enough, at 8 p.m., Brandon walked into the hotel under the arm of my lovely wife. She was wearing a little black dress, dark stockings, and high-heeled shoes that flaunted her saucy little breasts. Apparently, she had forgotten to wear a bra for such an occasion. They were laughing, greeting those around them with a cheerful, celebratory tone, as if they were a loving couple. I fully expected them to show up, but I wasn't ready to see their relationship on public display. Somehow I was able to contain my anger and videotape the scene on my cell phone. I later shared it with my son when I was explaining why his mom and I were divorcing. Watching her with Brandon, I called her cell phone and saw Marie look at her phone to see who was calling and transferred the call to voicemail. As I watched her reject my call and turn her attention back to Brandon, I felt someone run a hand down my chest and pull my heart out. All my love and years of devotion to Marie had been flushed down the toilet. I felt my eyes fill with tears. Somehow I managed to hold them back and leave a few messages in a vain attempt to salvage what little we had left. The end of our marriage. She didn't even listen to the messages that night. I stayed at dinner and watched them from a distance. It was obvious she was closer to him than she was showing because they acted like a couple throughout dinner. I was cautious and stayed out of sight, and around 10 p.m., after a few dances and kisses, it was clear that they were going to leave the party. I already knew from the message that he had a hotel room, and for £100, which I gave to the corridor man, I got the room number, 1246. Kim, the person in charge of processing, arrived exactly on time at 10 p.m. and we discussed my plans. I happily gave her an extra £200 for her help. At 11 p.m., Kim and I took the elevator and walked up to room 1246. Kim knocked on the door and we heard some movement as I stood to the side of the peephole. A low voice came from the room. "Who is it?" Kim put her ID card to the peephole and said, "Security! Please open the door." He obviously didn't read the ID she showed, but it worked, and we heard the door open. It opened just enough to see Brandon's face, and before he could speak, I stood in front of Kim and swung the door open with force, causing Brandon to jerk backwards. He fell to the floor naked in shock. A feminine sigh came from the room as he rolled over in front of Marie. Then her sigh turned to a loud scream when she saw that it was me standing in front of her naked body. As Brandon was left lying naked on the floor, I placed my foot on his neck. Pressing all of my 90 pounds against Brandon's throat, I told him not to move. I made a sign to Kim, who then walked over to Marie and handed her the divorce papers. Kim told her she had been served and took a picture of her standing naked with the envelope in her hands. She had a shocked look on her face as I removed my wedding ring and tossed it toward the wet spot on the bed. Marie saw my pain and finally realized the full implications of my choice. Suddenly, she wanted me and not her boyfriend. Well, too little, too late. "Charlie, I'm sorry, I made a big mistake and I don't want to lose you. I know it looks bad, but you know I love you and I don't want a divorce. Please let me come home to you and I'll explain everything and make things right again. Please don't do that." I just shook my head incredulously and looked at the brain-dead woman standing in front of me. For the first time, I realized how old and out of shape she looked. After seeing all of this, all the feelings I had for this woman were gone. The love I had felt all these years was now replaced with contempt and disgust. This became the final scene of our marriage. Standing over Brandon, still with my foot on his neck, I ordered Kim to leave me alone with the cheating couple. As the door closed, I looked at my wife and spoke in the voice of a desperate and angry man. "Congratulations! You broke my heart and ended our 20 years together. And you did it in the worst possible way. You lied to me, cheated on me, and then let that piece of shit fuck you. Because of that, our time together is over. Just sign the divorce papers and don't come home until Saturday afternoon. It'll take me a day to move my stuff out of the house. You can stay in our apartment until they sell it, which won't take too long. In the meantime, maybe you can move in with this asshole," I said, taking my shoe off his throat. I tapped my heel one more time, just to make sure I hit it right. I did, and the sound of a man in terrible pain could be heard as I left the room for the last time. Epilogue. Brandon was badly traumatized as he was slammed into the floor. He tried to press charges, but I told Marie that if she testified in favor of the asshole, I would tell her family about her affair and show them the pictures. She did the right thing and told the police she didn't recognize the man who had injured him. Brandon was angry and felt betrayed by the woman he stole from me. After 2 months of trying to get me to talk to her, Marie reluctantly signed the divorce papers. When she finally realized there was no way to save the marriage, she told our son the whole story. To her credit, she took the blame for ruining our happy years on herself. We sold the condo, split our money, and went our separate ways. Brandon was out of line and wanted nothing to do with Marie, now a single woman, and advised her to fuck off and find a new man. The 46-year-old divorced woman has no choice, especially when she's carrying an extra 10 pounds and isn't as desirable as she thought she was after a predator soiled her dress with shit. After 6 months in the gym, I gained my composure, got in good shape, and met a pretty 37-year-old divorced woman with a 9-year-old daughter. Patricia had an amazing body, and she appreciated a loyal, loving man and treated me like a king. Her daughter Melissa and I got along great, and I loved spoiling her. At the time of Jonathan's graduation, Marie was 50 years old and looked her age. She was lonely and unhappy with the way her life had turned out. I learned from Jonathan how upset she was to see me with my new family. Seeing me happy with my new pretty wife and beautiful daughter made her sad and jealous. Marie told our son how sorry she was for her actions and how badly she had treated me. She still couldn't forgive herself for allowing herself to be seduced by that asshole. She told Jonathan that losing my love made her realize what she had given up and how much she missed her old life. All that pain and loss because of her selfish desires. On the other hand, my life changed for the better in less than a year after the divorce was finalized. Patricia's ex-husband cheated on her, and she knew how much pain it caused. She swore she would never do that to me or our happy marriage. We remained married and faithful to each other for the next 30 years and enjoyed our 3 grandchildren that Melissa and Jonathan blessed us with. We never heard from Brandon after his injuries. Marie never remarried and lived the next 20 years as a lonely old woman and never forgave herself for betraying me, her husband, and ruining her happy life. Jonathan married a wonderful girl, gave us another grandchild, and became close to my new family. I only saw Marie at Jonathan's events and at her funeral. Nothing hurts like turning a loved one into a life lesson. I guess there aren't many ways to find out about a cheating wife. I danced with Marcy Blaine at Harvest Moon Dance, the club my wife and I belong to. It's the Southside Golf and Country Club, one of the trendiest clubs in Chicago. It's unusual things like this that make Lucinda happy, and I have the money to keep her happy. At least I hoped she would be happy. Anyway, Marcy is one of Lucinda's closest friends. She and her husband Charlie shared a table with us, and he wasn't a good dancer, so I played the part of the good guy, giving Marcy a chance to get on the dance floor. We slid across the floor, being both tipsy, just relaxed, and I said, "You and Lucinda have definitely been spending a lot of time at the gym lately. Are you both training for a marathon or just trying to get even better than you already are?" I was just chatting while complimenting her. Marcy and Lucinda are actually both great-looking women in their 30s compared to my 40s, with long legs and amazing figures. But Marcy surprised me. She didn't pay attention and, without hesitation, said, "Gosh, Dave, I haven't been to the gym in weeks. I don't know why you—" Then, belatedly, she must have realized she'd said the wrong thing. I think she and Lucinda developed a story, and Marcy just forgot about it. I saw her looking at me in horror, so I pretended not to pay attention. I said, "Huh? Oh, sorry, Marcy. I think you noticed Jack Yelenick at the back of the room. I haven't seen him at any of these dances in years. So, what did you say?" I purposely gave Marcy a second chance, and she took it, watching me closely. "Oh, I just said Lucinda is really working me hard. She's the one determined to always stay young. I'd rather relax in the steam room." She laughed, and I laughed with her. I could see that she was almost certain she had gotten away with it, and that was exactly what I wanted her to think. Inside, of course, I had a predictably queasy feeling in my stomach. If Lucinda wasn't spending a few hours at the gym 2 or 3 times a week, where was she? I never liked the term trophy wife, but I had to admit that Lucinda met all the requirements. My first marriage, right out of college, ended after a few years, and I spent the rest of my 20s and 30s alone, working up a sweat. I dated some, but mostly devoted myself to learning the financial services business and started my own firm. We hit the $100 million mark when I was 38 years old, and by the time I turned 40, I was worth about $12 million myself. We met Lucinda at a party and became instant friends. Not surprising, at least on my part, as she is a very beautiful and full of life, funny, confident, and intelligent. It's much less obvious why she was interested in me, although someone might have told her about my money, but she seemed to like me from the start. We dated for 6 months or so before I asked her to marry me, and although I made it clear that marrying me implied an ironclad prenuptial agreement, she was happy to say yes. At her insistence, we had a big, fancy Chicago society wedding, followed by a 3-week honeymoon in Bali, where she basically tried to fuck me to death. Did I mention that Lucinda likes sex? Either that, or she likes to please me and knows I like sex. Either way, all the bouncing we did, before and after the wedding, made me a very happy person. Now, however, Marcy's casual reservation made me wonder if I was about to become a cliché, the trophy wife's cuckolded husband. It didn't take more than 2 weeks to figure out the sordid details. Lucinda was sleeping with Chris Remington, Director of Human Resources for Chicago Serves, the charitable organization for which she serves as a volunteer. Lucinda didn't want to work all the time once we were married, and that was fine with me. Apparently, they sweated it out in the bedrooms of various fancy hotels for months on end. God knows how they paid for the rooms, because Lucinda was careful to make sure there were no surprise charges from her Platinum Amex card. However, all this fun didn't stop Lucinda from keeping my bed warm. Our own sex life was as vigorous as ever. I didn't know if she really still cared about me, or if she was somehow aroused to jump into bed with me after returning from her boyfriend's sex. But it didn't really matter. Now that I knew I was sharing her, our marriage had to end. But you don't succeed in business by being hot-tempered and acting on emotion, and I was pretty successful in business. I decided to take at least 2 weeks to think about my options before I lowered the arrow on my sweet, misguided wife. She would leave. That was decided. But first I needed to know more, and the more had to do with a conversation on one of the audio tapes my detective agency had told me about. They had all the audio and pictures I would ever need, but I hadn't watched or listened to any of it. She cheated on me. Our marriage was over, and that was it. No need to torture myself, but apparently her intimate conversations started to go beyond the usual, moving into the realm of, "I can hardly wait until we're together all the time," and "When are you going to get all the money together and leave your husband?" Stories erotic. This got my attention, so I did a little careful investigation and checking. It turned out that over the past 4 months, my loving bride had managed to sneak away over $230,000 of my money. She had been making routine ATM withdrawals, not too much at a time, but much more frequently than she used to. And she was buying dresses, shoes, and accessories with her Amex card. I never limited her budget, and then quietly returning them for cash. I know the stores wouldn't allow you to do that. My guess is that Lucinda was quietly working with them, either because she was such a good customer or because someone was getting a discount. Either way, she was getting away with it. So I caught Lucinda red-handed, but I didn't know where the money was. And I knew that $230,000 wasn't enough to keep her happy for long, so I thought, what's the rest of the plan? And decided to sit tight a little longer until I figured it all out. It wasn't until 3 days later that I got an answer. A young woman from First United Bank had called my office to discuss my safe deposit box. Actually, our safe deposit box, because it was a joint account with Lucinda. The young woman, Judy Stenberg, was obviously a good employee, attentive and proactive. She had only been working at the bank for a few weeks, having gotten the job when she returned from Sweden, where she had worked for several years and acquired a husband. So she called to let me know that my wife had made quite a scene that day. She tried to gain access to our safe deposit box, but Judy informed her that she couldn't open it unless I was also present and signed the bank ledger. It seems that Lucinda was being too demonstrative in showing her feelings, and Judy needed the help of 2 security guards to get her to leave. It only took a few seconds before I realized that I now knew the rest of Lucinda's plans. In our safe deposit box, among various legal documents of no financial value, was about $2 million worth of jewelry that I had purchased for my beloved wife. A dazzling diamond necklace, several diamond earrings, and a sapphire and diamond bracelet. I had always thought that, whatever my other charms, it was these expensive purchases of mine that convinced Lucinda of my potential as a husband. And now it seemed that she viewed these trinkets as a stash for her and Chris, her young lover's escape. A few more days of audio surveillance gave the rest I needed. Lucinda had already given Chris the money. She seemed to trust her lover a lot. They had bought plane tickets for 2 separate and elaborate trips to Rio de Janeiro. All that was left for Chris was to impersonate me at the bank and help Lucinda get the jewelry out of the safe. After that, they'll be on their way. Whoever said knowledge is power was absolutely right. The rest was child's play. On the morning of Thursday, November 19th, Lucinda wanted to wake me up early. She had a nice way of doing it, too. Then she dragged me into the shower where we played a little while we bathed. "That was a good start to the day, honey," I said. "Isn't there a special occasion today?" She smiled back and handed me my coffee. "Not at all, Dave. I just wanted to make sure you knew how I felt about you." She came over and sat on my lap, snuggling up and feeding me a piece of bacon. We hugged and kissed for the rest of breakfast, and then I went to get dressed for work. As I was putting on my coat, she came down the hall and said carelessly, "Oh, by the way, darling, that damned board meeting has been moved to this evening, so I may be quite late. It's a big annoyance, but I promised I'd go. Will you forgive me?" I got another big hug and kiss along with the question, and of course I told her it was okay. It wasn't hard to see what she meant. She was forcing me not to worry, giving myself a few extra hours before I wondered where she had disappeared to. I smiled as I sat at my desk. Today was the day, and everything was in place. Lucinda's flight was scheduled to leave at 2:35, and Chris's flight, on a different airline, was scheduled to leave at 3:15. My men would be at the airport by noon, and when Chris tried to board, he would be arrested for concealing over $10,000 in cash in violation of federal currency regulations. I had evidence to show that the money was mine. Well, mine and Lucinda's, and there was little doubt he'd be in jail for some time. But no one was going to bother Lucinda. She would check her bags, get on the plane, and be on her way. After about 19 hours and 4 flights, she would land in Rio, ready to start her new life with Chris, lots of money and lots of valuable jewelry. The only problem was that there would be no Chris and no cash. My phone rang just after 11:30. As expected, it was Judy Stenberg. "They were here," she said. "As you predicted, your wife came in with someone else, a tall guy, a little younger than her. He signed your name, and they spent a few minutes with the safe and then left." I smiled broadly. "Thank you, Judy. You've been a great help to me, and I really appreciate you letting me quietly enter my safe deposit box the other day once I explained the situation." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the vision of Lucinda on the plane, holding her large purse in her lap with $2 million worth of jewelry, unaware that it was all fakes, worth about $150. Somehow I doubted that this money would be quite enough to give Lucinda the life she hoped for and was used to. "Listen," I said, "I'd like to express my appreciation in person. How about I take you and Hendrik out to dinner this Saturday night? Somewhere really fancy, like La Rondine?" Judy giggled and said, "Thanks, Uncle Dave, that would be great.